So,
Who are you? I'm not. I'm playing some daycare work. It's really scary. How, right? It's scary. Yeah. What are you doing today? Sorry. I didn't mean to. Started at 0. Are you a baby? It's daycare.
Okay, everybody, I think it's time to get started. If you can get rid of all your background noise and turn your cameras on, that would be great. All right, everybody, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So how are things for you guys today?
So-so, not great, not horrible, nothing stand out.
So kind of a 50-50, Alexandra, kind of just hanging in there. Okay.
I'm doing pretty good. I missed one of my classes this morning because of a massive brain fart, but it'll be fine, I think.
Did you get some extra sleep?
No, I tried to join the wrong class and didn't realize it for a really long time because I think my perception of time is a bit ruined right now.
I think COVID has sort of like taken all time measurement abilities away. That explains a lot about this class. No, I'm just joking, but seriously, I get where you're coming from. So let's see if we can make this class be on time. It's a bit ambitious today, what I want to do. But before that, I want to talk briefly about what's coming up. So as you may have noticed, hopefully you noticed on the syllabus that's on Moodle and elsewhere, on Thursday, you have questions due the first, for the first 100 pages of Shibagoro, the book titled Remembering Aizu. I want you to read the whole book, but this is just, a chance to sort of get you the first 100 pages and have those under your belt so that when you go into finishing the book for the weekend and doing your essay, you'll be all set. But the questions are just about the first 100 pages. And they are up on Moodle, so you can answer those. There'll be a box for those to be dropped into probably tomorrow up on Moodle as well. I also wanted to mention, before class, I sent out an email with a 3-page handout that I would have given you. In class, it would have been a bit different, but it's a handout that has 3 sheets. And if you can possibly get those up on your, it's a Word document, or you can get those up on your computer screens. The second window, have those ready so as we change gears about mid-class, you can refer to those. I will try to rotate the slides that have those the same image and questions, but it'll be hard. So you'll be in groups. If you're able to look back to your cell phone or your computer screen with with a window that has that document set, it'll be much easier for you to do this stuff. So Any questions anybody has? Had lots of questions over the past few days as we sort of begin to ease into the course finally, and we're settling in. So any questions anybody has? I saw a hand, but maybe he's just yawning. Wells, the question? No,
No, I was just stretching. Sorry.
we should all just stretch, this little stretch, a little 1 o'clock for you guys, 7 o'clock for me stretch. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yes, Vincent.
So I'm looking at the syllabus, and this said that there's a reflection blog post due on the 10th. What is that?
Yeah, good question. This is going to be a chance for you to like write an informal couple sentences about today's activity. So just when it's done, think about how it went, and you can kind of just submit that. It'll be also a thing that you can put into an envelope that'll be on Moodle. That's right. That's also due on Thursday. Does that answer your question, Vincent?
So we're basically making 2 assignments: the task and questions, and the reflection blog post.
Yeah, the blog post should be like, just 2 sentences, very brief, informal, but the questions are a bit more involved. So, but those are both due on before class on Thursday. Thank you. All right. So,
where's the
Carrie,
essay prompt?
yes. The essay prompt, I think it's on the syllabus.
Oh, it's okay. I must have missed it.
Yeah, in the top part of the syllabus, it should say, but I will make sure it's there again. It's always good to go back and check. And then I will email everybody tomorrow with the essay prompt as well. So you have it in 2 different places, and we're all on the same page. Thanks, Carrie. Other questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, Naya.
Okay, so the essay is due on Sunday, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
At 12 o'clock?
At midnight, by midnight, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Yes, Nam.
Okay, so how detailed is the reflection? Do we have to write?
Very brief and not detailed. Like as if we were having a conversation and I asked you, hey, how did the assignment go? You just say, well, this was okay, this was difficult, this was great, just sort of whatever comes off top of your head, put that into a couple sentences and drop that into the folder I'm going to put up on Moodle.
How many words do you require?
Let's see. Let's say like 30 words. It's a good number.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna give you a PowerPoint share. Share my screen. It's coming. You see my screen? I think you can. Good. Okay. So I asked you to look over parts of 2 different previous lectures because they provide some detail on things that I thought we could, use some background on. And I want to go over a few details from that lecture actually today before we get into the main part of our lecture today, and then we'll, as I said before, we'll change gears. So the most important thing I want to sort of walk away from in terms of the lecture pieces that you watched is this new ideology that comes about in the 1700s. We're talking about, we discussed the importance of Neo-Confucian ideology and the importance of, sort of knowing your place and achieving social harmony by following the rules of society for your gender and for your class and for your status, all those kinds of things. But there was a sort of alternative set of ideologies that were beginning to pop up. And I want to discuss 2 of those today because they're important for sort of how we exit the shogunate period, the Edo period, and move into modern Japan. The first of these, what I call an alternate sub-orthodoxy, is called national studies or kokugaku. And this is a sort of group of ideologies that are grouped together, begun by sort of several different people, but the most important figure for you to remember is Motoori no Inaga, who we see here. A physician who was actually pretty bored and was really interested in Japanese literature and read a lot of Shinto and Buddhist scholars' works that were trying to get into the sort of Japanese history and Japanese culture and go way back to the 700s and 800s and discover Japanese identity and what it really was. And he takes this document called the Kojiki, which is Japan's first imperial history, written in 712 in the Common Era. This is a book that is an oral history, but which is written down to tell the story of Japan's imperial family's foundation and where it comes from. This is the book that has the story of the sun goddess giving birth to whose great-grandson becomes the founding first emperor of Japan, Jimmu, and other things like that. It also tells the sort of how the world goes from being nothing to the creation of Japan. So this sort of myth history that comes down through time from 712 is a popular and more available text for people to look at. It's written actually in Chinese characters that are very hard to read, and it's not actually a very coherent text. So you have to sort of figure out what it means. And Motoori Norinaga offers his own theories on what this text is saying, is his own gloss of this text called the Kojiki Den, or the Kojiki sort of essay or thesis. And basically his argument is that this text is a true historical document, saying this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. There's no metaphor, it's a literal history of what happened. And that using it will make Japan stronger. So he argues that, for example, that the humans and the gods are actually very closely tied together, the kami and the humans on earth, that the emperor is the mediating force and entity between heaven and earth and between the kami and the human beings, that he is in fact at all times part kami or deity, and that also this document shows Japan's true national character and identity, that this thing called the Chinese mind or karagokoro, this has come to Japan over the centuries. It's corrupted Japan's natural essence, the simplicity and beauty of Japan. And he draws, one idea he draws upon is the idea of mono-aware, which is the idea that Japanese have this innate sort of, they're sensitive to nature, and they really feel deeply the seasons, and they use nature in all their poetry because it's just a part of who they are. And that these kinds of, this is just one of many elements that the Japanese are losing because of all this Chinese Chinese language, and as well as Buddhist influence. So during his lifetime, this is actually in the 1790s that he becomes most popular. He accumulates about 500 students at the Suzunoya, which is his atelier, his studio. And the students come from all over Japan. And this is actually in Ise province, which if you think back to our map is sort of at the very edge of the Kansai region. It's a little bit outside, but it's sort of right next to the area where ancient Japan had its capitals. It's also the place where the shrine to the sun goddess, and therefore to the imperial family's tutelary kami is located. So from this point on, his students become a little more influential. His read on this text becomes politically very influential and important. And students of his, I put here, this is kind of a really dumb joke, but he was remote. He never actually met, as far as we can tell, Norinaga, but Hirata Asutane was a student of and an admirer of, and also a correspondent with Motoori Norinaga. He takes this message and makes it even more political, more literal, and beyond that, he also gets the message out much further. He in fact actually has to go into hiding, into exile, because his ideas become quite controversial. He writes a text called The Chronicle of the Perpetual Rule of the Emperor, in which he explains how the Kojiki essentially calls for the emperor to be the true ruling figure in Japan and not the shogunate. As you can imagine, this is a bit of a controversial position to hold. And his exile to Akita, sort of in the far north of Japan, is a punishment, but it's also a chance for him to get more students to come see him outside of the sort of the purview of the government, who are not interested in what's happening in the far north very much. I also mentioned that he has ties to the Mito school, which is the second of the important sub-orthodoxies that I want to talk about today. Mitogaku, or the Mito school, originates from this blue area here called Mito domain. This is a domain that is very important because the shogunate has a main line of shoguns and shoguns' sons, and so on and so forth. But they also have two cadet lines that can provide a shogun if the main line doesn't provide one. And Mito is one of those two cadet lines. It's the most important of these cadet lines. They're not able to rule because they're not able to be in the government because of the fear that they might sort of try and perhaps assassinate someone and themselves become the shoguns. But they have money and land and a lot of free time. With that time, they also are reading all they can get their hands on, and they really become a center for learning in Japan. And learning that because of their special status is a bit sort of outside what is punishable by the shogunate. Tokugawa Mitsukuni, who is one of the earlier of the daimyo of Mito, begins the compiling of the Great Nihonshi, which is a history of Japan, which is only completed in 1919, which is again trying to figure out Japan's origins and its history and its who has been important in the history of Japan and all those kinds of things. And to make a long story short, this group also comes to the conclusion that the emperor should be in charge of Japan. The shogunate was supposed to be a deputized figure and not someone who was in charge of everything all the time, even though the Mito domain owes their position to the shogunate, obviously. And this domain also, in bringing in scholars, brings many who are closely tied with Hirata Atsutani, who I mentioned in my last slide. So these ideas are going to become influential as these different groups merge in the mid-1800s. The daimyo of Mito is Tokugawa Nariaki, who is himself an intellectual and a scholar. He recruits the best scholar he can find who is willing to think about things beyond a Neo-Confucian ideology, and that is Aizawa Yasushi, or also pronounced Aizawa Seshisai. Excuse me for a second. Aizawa writes a text himself called the New Thesis, in which he explains that the shogunate has gotten things all wrong. And the shogunate for him has indulged over the past 2.5 centuries in a lifestyle of luxury and sort of waste, but they've also been lazy, and because of that they've been relatively weak. And when challenges come to Japan, which he argues they will come from outside Japan, the shogunate will be unable to respond to these different kinds of challenges. From the Mitogaku scholars, as well as from the Kokugaku scholars, he pulls this idea of the emperor is a unifying symbol at the very least and should be in charge of the country as well. And this becomes the ideology, the Mito domain school and ideology will propagate over the next several years. Now, what's he talking about, this idea of a threat from outside? What's happening here? What's happening is that Western countries are really trying to get to Japan. They want to access Japan because it's a way to get to China. It is for silk, all kinds of resources that China has to offer. It's also a way to control shipping lanes in the Great Pacific. At this point, whaling is very profitable and it's being overdone. And the countries that have a great interest in Pacific whaling projects think Japan is a good place to be able to stop. And there are a long list of reasons why people are trying to get to Japan. But anyway, so Russia, for example, tries to get access to Japan, which, if you recall, only allows trade with one Western country, and that's the Netherlands, at the little port here of Nagasaki once a year. That's it. Russia tries to edge in on that and to gain access, but they cannot. They at one point, even 1806, actually try and fight their way to force Japan to open to trade with them, but they lose. And they try again in 1842. Great Britain also tries to find a way into this trade. In 1808, they in fact make a very interesting choice. They actually send a ship flying a Dutch flag called HMS Phaeton into the harbor at Nagasaki. And this is actually a big catastrophe for the shogunate because they were supposed to, basically the shogunate was supposed to fire a warning cannon volley that would notify the people arriving of the protocol. They would also launch a volley of their own cannons, showing that they didn't mean to harm the Japanese, and the ship would come and they could trade at Dejima. What happened really was that when the Dutch ship came, which actually was a British ship, nothing happened. There was no fanfare, there was no volley, and instead of when the magistrate who was in charge of this process, who was obviously a high-ranking samurai, realized that this was a dangerous situation, he called the troops who were supposed to come and fight off an invasion, and only about 150 came, as opposed to what should have been 1,000 troops to come and repel the foreign invasion at Japan's only port for foreigners. So this was a fiasco. The magistrate had to commit seppuku, or ritual suicide. But it also demonstrated to the shogunate, as well as all the daimyo who were watching, that the shogunate was unprepared for the West. They try again in 1818, because after this happens, they actually leave the British, and then they come back and try again, but each time they're unsuccessful. The most persistent, though, is the US. They try 27 times to access Japan. Each time they're rebuffed. They try, sailors are shipwrecked, and they claim the need for assistance, and they are, turned away. They really try their best, but they're turned away each time until today's story. Aware of these pressures, right? The shogunate does begin to try and respond. The shogunate has definitely, through its cousins who are in Mito, heard about this ideology of the Mito ideology and the need to strengthen their foreign defense systems. So they actually put orders out to expel any foreign ship in Japanese waters in 1825. But then by 42, they've begun to soften those requirements and allowing the Japanese to give fuel provision and safe departure for Western ships because they want to avoid a war. But they're also at the same time going to be trying to build up their coastal defenses against Western forces that are on the horizon. The Western forces on the horizon, this is a trickling in of news from what's happening actually just across the North China Sea. In China, the Opium Wars, which have broken out, long story that I will not go into for today, but basically this is the story of Great Britain selling opium to China and then taking Chinese silver to then buy tea. The opium, by the way, comes from a British colony, mostly from Pakistan and part of India, and so it's free for that basically. And so it's a way not to spend money anymore British silver in order to buy the highly sought after Chinese tea. The Chinese oppose this. They're sick of opium hurting their country. They tell them to stop. The British decide to, the merchants decide to take a war position, and they actually attack and then defeat China in the Opium Wars. So Japan is aware of this, and Big Brother China, which is a big neighbor, a powerful country that Japan has respected in many ways, loses this to this Western power. It's actually a joint force, but the Western powers, and so Japan is aware of what could happen if they treat Westerners too harshly or move too quickly to repel them. So in 1853, the US makes its final attempt, and very important attempt, to open trade with Japan. The President of the United States, Millard Fillmore, sends Commodore Matthew Perry of the US Navy to give a message from him to the Emperor, and he's accompanied by 3 more gunships. So there are 4 very impressive steam-powered gunships that are in Tokyo Bay in July to deliver the message that we're going to talk about next. So I want us now I'm going to stop my screen share. Well, maybe I I'm not sure if I need to do that. Let's see if I can keep the share going. So I'm going to put you guys into groups, and I want you to go through. There are 3 different activities that I set up, and each activity has a number 1, 2, and 3. And there are some tasks to do at first. There are sort of thinking tasks, and then there are discussion tasks. So I'd like to ask you to get whatever way you might be able to access those tasks and the images to get ready to do that. I'm gonna put you into groups right now.
What are you supposed to do?
I'm going to put you into to groups, but my group thing is not appearing. So what's happening?
Do we need to write our answers down, or is it just like a talk about them kind of thing?
It's a talk thing.
Okay.
For some reason, the breakout room button is not appearing. Every class I've been able to find the breakout rooms, but not today. Any suggestions on where it might have gone to? Let's see. Manage participants, got everyone there. No. Okay, I'm gonna log off and come back on and see if that helps. So you can just relax. Okay. Okay, so I have no idea where it was there yesterday, but it's gone. So I'll figure that out. So instead, let's do this as a class. So if you can pull up the sheets I sent to you on a screen somewhere on the side of your screen, on a different window.
There is something that Kenneth suggested in the chat. Go to your profile, click on meeting settings, and in meeting advanced section, you can enable breakout room. It might be that you just have it turned off.
So in meetings, continue, Alexandra.
Click on meeting settings in meeting the advanced section. Click enable breakout room.
So what I see is I see breakout room pre-assigned, but not enable breakout room.
I don't know. I'm just repeating what was written in the chat.
Settings. Meeting settings, maybe? Breakout room. Yeah, it's there. Allow host to assign participants to the thing. Yeah, it's there. And then let's try again. Turn it off. Back on. Yeah. Turned it back on and back off and back on, and it still is not appearing. So it is beyond what we can do right now. So, okay, so if you guys can, let's look at number 1 first. So open that somewhere when you can look at it. There should be an image. I'm not sure if you can see this or not. You probably can't. Let me try. Let's try and share screen for a sec so you can see what I've got on my screen. Okay. So this is an image here, a little bit bigger for you. All right, so this is the image I want us to look at first. This is an image of the arrival of Commodore Perry. He actually returns a year after his first arrival with more ships and an ultimatum that Japan has had a year to think about it, the need to let the US trade with Japan. So take a second, look at this image, please, and then I'd like to ask you to locate Commodore Perry, and then look if you can locate the American Navy seamen, locate the Japanese officials, and the Japanese onlookers. So have a look at that for a second, see if you can figure out who's who in this image.
We're not looking at the screen anymore. We're looking at you searching up Zoom breakout room stuff.
Yes, thank you. That's very, yes. Okay, good. So, thank you, Alexandra. Okay, so you had a second to think about, to look for who's who. All right, so could you just raise your hand, like with the raise your hand button, and tell me if you can locate Commodore Perry in this image. I can only see a few people at a time. Can anyone locate Commodore Perry?
I can't seem to find the button to raise my hand, but is he right in like the, I don't want to say like middle left, Yeah, a little bit more further to the left.
So
not there, but a little bit further to the left,
the
like
left,
in front of the
okay.
flags, right there. Right there, yeah. That's what I'm thinking.
Right there.
Yeah.
And who's speaking right now?
This is Sam Langeth.
Okay, Sam. All right, Sam. Yes, so that is Nick Commodore Perry. From what you can see, what can you tell us about Commodore Perry and his attitude and how he's drawn here?
I would say he's being aggressive in his stance, being like a wide stance. I can't quite tell. It seems like maybe his arms are crossed or something.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see, but he's definitely not at sort of an attention or some sort of a passive stance. He is at ease and very much in control of the situation. Okay, very good. Can you now show me somebody else? We're the American Navy seamen. And if you can also just speak up, and I'll figure out who you are. That's okay. Where are the officers and the seamen?
I think they might be like sort of to the right of Commodore Perry, like at a diagonal towards the sea in the blue with the hats.
Yeah. So these are all of the seamen here, and we have a few more soldiers here along the edge, and over here, and over there. Okay, so just sort of clock that. Where are the Japanese officials?
On the bottom left.
On the?
Yeah, right there.
So over here, right? So we have the delegation of officials mostly here, and we have a few more, probably lower officials here as well, carrying the banners. So this is our situation, right? So I wanted to ask you guys some questions about this image. First of all, what is the attitude of the Americans that you see as they're depicted here? And this is actually a painting done by a German onlooker who was hired to paint the picture, but I think he did a pretty good job. So what is the American attitude that you sense here?
I sense a little bit of like hostility in the way, like the formation of the Americans.
So is that Ferris we just spoke of?
Yeah.
So hostility, and how can you sense that from this?
Just kind of like the way they're lined up, like it's very orderly fashioned, and you see kind of like the flags. So kind of like, I don't know if they're about to fight, but I'm assuming just based on like the image, kind of like there's like kind of like, I guess, a negotiation thing going on, but it just seems like they're on like standby for something.
I think that's actually really accurate. So they're definitely they're in a threatening position. They are ready to fight if they have to, right? And this is a show of force. And the 9 gunboats in the harbor are also not there by accident. They're there to make a statement to Japanese. If you were a Japanese spectator, you were just watching, hear all the Japanese onlookers here behind the soldiers or the seamen. I don't know. How would you feel seeing all this unfold?
I would say.
Yeah, go ahead, Broderick first, and then maybe Daniel.
I'll say it's a little disrespectful because it is like I see a show of hostility, but not necessarily like that hostile because all the soldiers do have their backs to all the people. So that's kind of like really disrespectful to kind of just be standing there in force, but then not kind of showing your face to the people that you're in front of. So that's kind of my take.
Okay. So they're holding them back. They're disrespectful. So you might feel disrespected. I think that's fair, right? And I think Daniel had his again to speak as well.
I would say like anticipation / like maybe like fear, like stressed out to like what's about to happen because like they're all kind of like paroled like to the side, like it's a very like they're in one spot and like can't go anywhere else.
So they're contained, and all they can do is watch, right? And what they're seeing is this is about to go off, right? They're pretty concerned. This is going to become something dramatic. So there is fear and stress, but also perhaps some excitement. So those are, I think, some good analyses that you guys made there. Let's go to the next image. This one will be harder to see. If you have it somewhere else, it's better to look at it there than on my screen, but I'll put it up anyway. So this is the letter from President Fillmore. Look at it, please. Just look at it, all the way through. Make sure that you remember the author, date, and audience, as with all primary sources, and just kind of have a look through it for the next 2 minutes or so, and we'll talk about it afterwards. At the top again on the other page, other side, other column, for you guys to see that. Okay, guys, so let me just ask you, first of all, this is a letter from Millard Fillmore to the Emperor of Japan. What is the message, if you had to sort of boil it down into like one sentence, of this document that he wants to convey to the Emperor of Japan?
I'd say that Fillmore wants to just trade with Japan.
Okay, so we want to trade with you. Please let us trade with you. Thank you. Is it Gilles?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I see it more as a...
What else might we be able to add to that? Yeah, Alexandra.
Yeah, I see it more as a trade with us or else kind of thing, like, or else there's going to be consequences if you don't. The tone is very, not argumentative, but forceful in its language. I'd say the only part that isn't like that is the part where they're asking for if people get shipwrecked on Japan, for them to be, not killed and treated okay. I'd say that's the only section that's not like either bragging and saying, hey, look at all of this strength and all this power that we have, do what we say, or we're going to use it against you. That's kind of the vibe I get from this letter.
Yeah, very much so, right? At no point does President Fillmore say, be forced to take up arms against you, but every paragraph has allusions to Americans' power and how close they are to Japan, right? And how and their evolution has been so impressive, and how they could, in only, what was it? How far was it?
18 days.
Yeah, 18 days. Yeah, they could just cross over and just, if they have to, make things happen in Japan, right? So this is a very forceful, threatening, sort of prideful letter that they've sent here to Japanese. As you can imagine, this will set off some fireworks in Japan. For sake of time, and because the thing I wanted to do didn't work with the breakout rooms. I'm going to let you just sort of on your own look at the last image. It's an image of a sumo wrestling match. You can look at that on your own and think about it. But I'm going to move forward and we can finish today's lecture talking about how all of this does immediately impact Japan. So let's move to that now. So the U.S. Comes back to Japan. They have this letter that was actually issued in 1953, so they bring the letter back. But they also bring back a lot of things to demonstrate how advanced the United States is in comparison to Japan. They bring American books, British books as well. They bring telegraph machine, clocks, weapons, lots of tools for agriculture, potatoes from Ireland. Of course, they bring some whiskey and champagne today. Japan's whiskey the Scotch has come to number amongst the best in the world. Not their champagne so much, but the whiskey definitely. They also bring a miniature steam train, which they actually set up on the beach to demonstrate the Japanese. The Japanese actually take turns riding on this miniature steam train, getting to experience, the impressive American might for technology and science, but also they get to have a good time. So all of these pieces together are meant to impress Japan thoroughly, but also a bit to scare Japan about the possibilities of what this country would do if Japan refuses to, at the very least, allow sailors to who are marooned or shipwrecked or whatever to be taken care of. In defiance of their almost at this point over 2 centuries of policy of exclusion. So the chief counselor is the second in line, the next most important person to the shogun. They are the sort of the prime minister of the country, and the chief minister is Abe Masahiro, and he's not sure what to do when he gets the ultimatum in 53. So he asks the counselors, he asks the daimyo what they think. And as you may realize, that's 250 daimyo, all of whom have various points of view, some of whom like the shogunate, some of whom don't like the shogunate as much. So they don't agree on anything. They don't have there's no consensus. And so he has to step down. The next chief counselor is Hotta Masayoshi, who tries to ask the emperor, well, since you're the emperor, why don't you just look at this? It's to you. This is a letter that's addressed to you. So why don't you just look at this and decide how we should handle it? And the emperor, in fact, Emperor Kome, does not want to sign, and he actually orders the shogunate not to sign, even though everyone knows the shogunate, by not signing, is going to lead Japan down the road to war. So he has to resign as well. The next chief counselor to come to be elected is Inosuke, who is a very shrewd politician and also a pragmatist. He decides, you know what, screw it. The shogunate should sign the treaty. I will sign it on the shogun's behalf. And he appoints a new shogun who will do sort of what he thinks is best, Tokugawa Iemochi. And he purges all of those members of the shogun's sort of top staff who are in favor of more imperial power and who are influenced by the ideology of the Mito school of thinking and those kinds of things. So in the end, when he signs this is the beginning of the Harris Treaty, which becomes the U.S.-Japan Treaty of Amity and Commerce in 1856. Opens 8 treaty ports in Japan to U.S. trade. There's 2 important features that I want to make sure we are aware of. One is that goods going from Japan to the U.S., which will be, there'll be plenty of them, will arrive in the U.S. with high tariffs to make it harder and more to make them more expensive to buy. And then American goods arriving in Japan will arrive with low fixed tariffs. Other importantly, I want to mention is extraterritoriality. This is a situation in which Americans living in these treaty ports in Japan will be judged under American law, not Japanese law. The treaty also includes the most favored nation clause, which means that any other country, usually Western countries, who arrives and opens trade with Japan after this will have the same rights. So Japan goes from being a closed country besides Nagasaki's little western outlet of Dejima to having 8 and later on 10 and later on 12 port cities open, not to only the US, but also other Western countries in a very short amount of time. And so Japan will not be the same, obviously, from this point on. This changes everything. So we'll look more at the amazing and sort of phenomenal things that happen afterwards. And as you're reading the Shibagoro memoir, you can also look at how those changes were affecting the samurai class, especially the elite samurai class, and keep that in sort of all these changes in mind. They go pretty well together. So that's all for today. Thank you all for a good class, for taking part, and I will see you on Thursday. Look for emails from me about where to put your questions and with a restatement again of the essay question and those kinds of things tomorrow. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening, or for you, afternoon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Professor, I think I figured out maybe what happened. I think you're not host of the meeting, which is why. If you click on participants, it'll open up a box, I think.
Yeah.
Which has all the names of everybody. In the bottom right-hand corner, there's a couple dots. Do you see that? And the raised hand.
I don't see. I see like claim host is what I see.
Yeah, if you click claim host, you become host.
Ah, and I wonder how that happened. Okay, that is helpful. Thank you, Sam.
Okay, I think it was because only the host can move people. So if you're not the host, then you can't do it. I think so.
That's helpful.
Yeah, things happen. So
I appreciate
have a nice
it.
day.
I will use that next time. I'll see you in a bit. Thanks.
All right. Yeah.
All right. So Devin, I think we're all set. Do you? I have class again after this, so I didn't see you before class today. Were you somewhere where I didn't see you?
I did join. I think I was here maybe like 5 of. I was a bit late joining.
Okay, I didn't see you, so I was worried that maybe I missed you. But okay, all right. So I think the emails we've sent, I think, are getting things, moving them along. So
yep.
Keep those coming, and if you have other questions, let me know.
Okay.
And we're all, I think for tomorrow with the book, I think we're all set with the book drop off pickup thing.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, David.
All right, talk to you later.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.